I'd like to call to order this November 18th, 2021 meeting of the Strongsville Board of Education. Mr. Anagnostou, would you take the roll?
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
Mrs. Salee?
Here.
Mr. Kopinski?
Here.
Mr. Micko?
Here.
Mrs. Hausum?
Here.
We are all present. Would you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next on our agenda is our district goals. Our district goals remain the same: academic achievement and growth, financial prudence, and community engagement. And tonight is an example of academic achievement and growth. We want to congratulate the 57 Strongsville High School students inducted into the National Honor Society last evening. The students not only represent some of our top students academically, but they also demonstrate a commitment to community involvement and service hours. And I know Dr. Ryba was at the event, and I'm sure it was wonderful and well received.
It was a wonderful event last night.
Next is public comment. I do not have any slips. Are there any people eager to public comment without a slip? Seeing none, next is recognition. Dr. Ryba?
No recognitions for this meeting.
Approval of minutes. We have our October 7th and October 21st Board of Education meetings. All district video and audio recordings are permanent parts of our minutes, and they're available on our website. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Hausum, second by Mr. Kopinski. Any discussion? Hearing none, please take the roll.
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
Mr. Kopinski?
Yes.
Mr. Micko?
Yes,
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
Mrs. Salee?
Yes.
and the motion carries. George, Treasurer's Report, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Micko. Good evening. I have several items for your consideration tonight. The first item, item A, is the 5-year forecast. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the treasurer that the 5-year forecast be approved, which is found in Exhibit A, and it was also presented at the November 4th work session to the board and to the community. And since then, there's been no changes to the forecast. Item B, the financial report for the month ending October 31st, 2021, which can be found in Exhibit B. And I also have my brief supplemental report to review for the October report. So for the October report, since we're also approving the forecast in November, to prepare the forecast, I use the October trend data. So in comparison to the forecast, there's no variance because the October trend data was used to prepare the November forecast. Cash balance is $11.1 million more compared to last October, and that's a result of the carryover from the end of last fiscal year, which was $11.3 million. And based on the forecast, our operating surplus at the end of this fiscal year is going to be about $6.1 million. The cash will increase by the end of the fiscal year. Revenues over expenditures, leaving with a cash balance of $59 million. Revenues for the month totaled $4.1 million, which is $157,000 more than last October, which was $3.9 million. Revenues for the month were higher due to the timing of the district receiving tuition payments due to court placements from ODE through the SF-14 distribution compared to last year. And it's a timing difference. In years past, these revenues were collected in September. For this year, ODE was a little behind in their payment, and it was made in October. And then state revenues are lower compared to October 2020 due to the adoption of the fair funding formula, in which revenues for community school scholarships and open enrollment will no longer flow through the district. and and then expenses for that as well will be reduced, and the net impact of that is going to be about $590,000 favorable to the district for the current fiscal year. Total year-to-date revenues. Year-to-date revenues are $750,000 higher through October compared to last October, and it's made up of property taxes for the fall collection are about $600,000 higher compared to last fall. State funding is $500,000 less compared to last October, based on the items I mentioned above through the charters, through the change of the state foundation formula. And other revenues are higher compared to last year due to kindergarten tuition being collected at the start of the school year versus monthly collections due to the remote days last school year. And refunds of prior year expenditures are $264,000 higher compared to last October. And how it compares to the forecast, there is no variance, as this data was used to prepare the November forecast. Expenditures. Expenditures for the month of October totaled about $6 million for the general fund. Prior year expenditures for October were $5.9 million, and actual compared to last year is higher, about $124,000. Salaries and benefits make up 84.2% of the expenditures, and they're higher due to the negotiated increase in salaries, step movements, and additional personnel, and healthcare increased about 1.37% in healthcare costs. Purchase services are down due to the change in the fair funding formula for the tuition out payments. And year-to-date expenditures through October totaling $24.6 million, which is about $1 million higher than the $23.6 million for last fiscal year through October. In comparison to the forecast, as mentioned, there's no change. And we'll continue to update this every month compared to the November 5-year forecast. So any questions on the October monthly financial report?
Thank you, George.
Thank you. Moving on the agenda, the next item, item C, grant approval. There is one SCF grant for the Soror Elementary Bluebird Nest Box for teacher Michelle Holland, and in the amount of $650. Item D, approval of new funds. The first one is a reclassification from a student-managed student activity to a district-managed student activity. It is for the middle school for the special education program with our student activity account. And the next one is a new one for an internal Rotary Service Fund for the high school student paths program, which is a career and college organization. We receive $1.50 per student that completes a survey, and the funds that are in turn back to the district are used by the high school English department. This isn't a new program. The funds were currently being funneled through the principal's 018 account. Since it's being used for a specific purpose, I thought it was cleaner to not have that included in the principal's account and have it a separate Rotary account as an in and out. Item E, transfer of funds. This completes the reclassification that was mentioned for the middle school student activity account. Item F, return of advances, which can be found in Exhibit D. This is an annual resolution that returns the advances that were made at the end of fiscal year, at the end of the prior fiscal year 21, for federal grants to cover any negative cash balances. For the grants are a reimbursable grant, and what that means is we have to spend the dollars first and then apply for reimbursement, and then we receive the cash. But where it gets tricky at fiscal year end, we can't close a fiscal year with funds having a negative cash balance, so the general fund has to cover it. So now that we receive the funds, those funds are now back to zero, and we could advance the dollars back to the general fund. Item G is the amended appropriation, permanent appropriation, which can be found in Exhibit E along with the changes. And then item H and item I are two separate votes. So first I'll get into item H. Treasurer of funds from the building fund 004 to the bond retirement fund Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the treasurer that a resolution be approved authorizing and directing the treasurer to transfer $13,161.55, the entire unexpended balance in Fund 004, Special Cost Center 9914, to the Bond Retirement Fund 002 to reduce the debt service funding requirement of the district pursuant to Ohio Revised Code Section 5705.14A.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second?
Motion by Mrs. Hausum, second by Mr. Kapinski. Any discussion?
And just to give clarity on what this is, so if you recall the $81 million bond issue from 2013, out of all the dollars we received, all the projects we did, all the savings and additional projects we did, including the tennis court, all that remained, that was unexpended, was $13,161.55. So since there's no other projects that can go towards, we have to move the funds to the bond retirement fund to go towards the payment of the principal. So this closes out the 004 fund for this purpose. So,
I think it's worthy to note that when we first started that project, and I know John remembers it well, I don't think anyone imagined being able to have as much bang for the buck and as much impact that the taxpayer dollars were able to provide. And I think it's a nice trivial pursuit answer that we still have $13,000 in that bond fund. And again, as stewards to the taxpayers' dollar, of the taxpayers' dollars, that $13,000 will go to pay off the bond, will go to pay off the mortgage that we have for all of that construction. Take the roll.
Mrs. Hausum,
Yes.
Mr. Kapinski,
Yes.
Mr. Miko,
Yes,
Mrs. Bissell,
Yes.
Mrs. Ali.
Yes.
and the motion carries.
And the last item I have is a resolution approving compensation agreement with FC Cherry Tree SPE LLC. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the treasurer that a resolution approving a compensation settlement agreement with FC Cherry Tree SPE LLC be approved as described in Exhibit F.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second?
Motion by Mrs. Hausum, second by Mr. Krupinski. Any discussion?
Just to give clarity on what this is a Board of Revision settlement agreement with Cherry Tree Apartments. Their value, they had a recent transfer in 2018 with a value of $36.2 million. The county had it valued at $25.1 million. So an agreement was made towards the sale price and the associated taxes. So we're entering into a 3-year settlement payment for tax years 18, 19, and 20 to receive about $271,926 over that period.
And I believe we have some legislation update later today that'll.
I was going to cover that after the vote.
Oh, well then I'm just gonna shut my mouth
You're
and
fine.
suggest that you take the roll.
Mrs. Hausum,
Yes.
Mr. Kapinski,
Yes.
Mr. Miko,
Yes,
Mrs. Bissell,
Yes.
and Mrs. Salee.
Yes.
and the motion carries. And I think it'd be a great time right now to explain how this segues into what's going on in Columbus. George?
Right. So there's a proposed legislation, House Bill 126. As it was initially proposed through the House, and it moved to the Senate, which is currently in the Senate Ways and Means Committee, but when it was initially proposed through the House, it was before any of these settlement agreement, any filings with the Board of Revisions. Right now, how it goes, we have an attorney who files complaints and counter complaints on the district's behalf. The original proposed House Bill 126 was for school districts to have a official board resolution, have the board formally adopt the complaints that are going to be filed, and then file it to the County Board of Revisions. As it went into the Senate Ways and Means Committee, there was an amendment to that legislation where it removes the school district's participation at all, that school districts cannot participate in counter complaints or complaints in general. So that amendment was added early last week. So over the past 2 weeks, the Senate Ways and Means Committee has heard testimony, opposition testimony from school districts, and then also proponent testimony for those that are in favor of it over the last 2 weeks. Last week, there were several school districts that provided testimony. Tuesday was another meeting. I provided testimony down to the Senate Ways and Means Committee along with other treasurers and superintendents from the state. So hopefully we were able to plead our case that it's critical for us to be at the table especially when business file these complaints, because they're not looking at the data provided by the county auditor. They're looking at data that's being submitted by both sides in the case and making a decision based on the data that's provided. So without having data on our end, it could be a one-sided argument. So provided testimony, Senator Dolan, which represents our district, is on the Senate Ways and Means Committee. So I've reached out to him, Mr. Micko has reached out to him, and other school districts in the area have also reached out to him. So right now, they've heard two weeks of testimony. I think they're breaking for Thanksgiving, so we're kind of at pause where it happens for now, but hopefully there's other districts are still communicating with Senator Dolan and the other members of the committee to stress the importance that districts have a seat at the table when these conversations are being had.
Well said.
Thanks. And with that concludes my report.
Any other questions for George? Hearing none. Superintendent's report. Dr. Rybra, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Micko. Under my items, we have one item for your consideration. It's the recommendation of the superintendent that the service proposal for the next phase of the career readiness through the Educational Service Center of Northeast Ohio be approved as stated in Exhibit G. So just to give some context, we have in the past and are continuing to utilize a consultant from the ESC to help provide guidance and support in our career pathways in the district. So some of the work that Amy is doing and will do, continuing with your possible approval of this item, is career planning from grades K to 12. There's requirements for success plans and graduation plans, so she's developing that process and documentation system within our district. She's working closely with the middle school and high school on those documents, as well as you may know, we have a career education pathway program that was started at the high school this past year. She's helping to support the teachers and build partnerships with our local business community to support that program. So that gives a little context as to the services that she provides. And as George mentioned yesterday, or yes, it feels like yesterday, but it was his 5-year forecast presentation. For our wellness fund, we use our wellness fund dollars for this consulting. So as he shared, we use it for a variety of our consultants, including our career consultant, as well as to help support a social worker and an elementary guidance counselor. So great use of those funds to help support our students in a different way. Any questions on that item? All right, with that, I'll bring up our operation manager, Steve Bruckner, for the business service report. Steve?
Good evening, everyone. A couple items that I have under this section. The first one is to give you an update on where we are at and where we're going to be going in the next couple of years with our capital improvement projects. I'll start off with HVAC. There are 2 projects that need to be done in the upcoming years. The first one that you're going to be seeing in the next month or 2 for your consideration is a replacement of an HVAC unit at Sarar Elementary. This is the HVAC unit that controls the front half of the building, the multi-purpose gym, cafetorium, whatever you wish to call it, the kitchen, those areas. It's original equipment to the building, and it's past the point of Band-Aids and tourniquets. It needs to be replaced. When we turn on the air conditioning, the condensation pans, just to give you an indication of how old it is and why the need is there, they've completely worn through. And the way that the school was built, it's obvious that the HVAC was put in and then the roof was put on. because it's so hard to even get to work on the equipment that it's become unmanageable. So you'll be seeing a proposal come to you to address that issue, so I'll be the first one on the docket. The other HVAC project that will be coming to you in the next few years will be a project at Kinsner Elementary. The HVAC there has had a couple of iterations of existence that have tried to stem some of the issues that were there when the building was first opened. I'm being as politically as possible, Mr. Kropinski. So the system that we're putting in would be much more efficient for the building, would use some of the current ductwork that's there for makeup units, and would abandon pulling in outside air from the ground level, which causes some issues there. So that's the HVAC projects that will be up for your consideration.
And Steve, before you go on, the Kinsner project right now is slated to be utilize ESSER funds, correct?
Correct.
So that the deadline for use of those ESSER funds would be when?
2023. So the proposal, as I have it, and you know, as I have it laid out in my plan, would be coming to you this time next year for your consideration on that plan. As far as the building envelope itself, we do have an issue here in this building that the outside wall is falling away, which is causing the roof to have some issues and expand. So while the cost is not known right now, I know that we're going to do the initial exploration in-house with the equipment that we have, and I'll be coming to you once it is discovered, and we won't be able to dig that out until the spring. Once we figure out what that is, have an engineer look at what we've been able to expose that's wrong with the base and the foundation, then I can come to you with a clearer picture and a plan of how to fix that issue. The other building envelope issue is that at some of our elementary schools, including Sarar, here at this building, Whitney and Chapman, we have plexiglass instead of glass at some of the windows, and that plexiglass over time has faded, it's scratched. Of course, it doesn't help us with any kind of energy efficiency or any kind of heating or cooling. So what's being investigated is the cost of replacing the windows versus the cost of just replacing the plexiglass and putting glass in. And that is something I am going to be getting to you within the next few months here so that we can address that issue as we also look at the larger issue of our buildings at the elementary level. As far as asphalt, as you may remember a few years ago, we did a comprehensive plan and resurfaced all of our, I shouldn't say resurfaced, we replaced all of the parking lots at the middle school. As part of a larger plan, we will be resurfacing that, sealing those parking lots this coming summer. So that will be coming up for your consideration in the next few months. That will help us extend the life. Unfortunately, sometimes people think, well, the asphalt looks good, we'll just hit the cracks, everything will be fine. But of course, we know winter in Ohio will just cause those to deteriorate if we don't take care of them. We do have one parking lot in the district that needs to be replaced as soon as possible. And that parking lot is the north parking lot where the majority of the teachers park at the high school. It was resurfaced as part of the renovation, but the ground underneath has shifted and is causing some severe heaves in the asphalt itself. The good news is when they did the renovation, they did encase all of the drainage with concrete skirts around the grates. So those are great. It's just everything else there needs to be ripped up and explored, backfilled, so that movement will stop. And we could keep keep resealing it, but it's not going to fix the literal underlying problem that the ground is shifted underneath. So as soon as we seal it, as soon as that rain comes in, as soon as that frost happens and then the thaw, we'd be right back to where we were. So it is time to look at that in earnest, fix that issue there in that parking lot.
And Steve, you're looking at that this summer?
That's what I'm looking at
asphalt
this
projects
summer.
or this summer?
Yep, all of these asphalt issues, I'm looking at getting all of those completed this summer. The last one that I'm investigating to complete this summer would be putting asphalt at the new tennis courts. That parking lot was designed to be paved at some point. It was graded that way. So while we have the crews there at the high school, it would be worth it not to have the machines mobilized again. So I would be looking at that as a comprehensive package at the high school to have that front lot repaired this summer, and then also to pave that tennis court parking lot this summer, and then as well as at the elementaries to have those sealed as part of a preventive maintenance plan. The last two items, sorry, there's three items. We're being aggressive with this. Stadium lighting, it's time to address the stadium lighting. Right now, the maintenance foreman, Keith, has all of the capacitors that have blown lined up on his desk. And it's just time. It's not outdated technology. It's the wiring is going bad over the years that it's been there. It's getting to the point where it's not cost effective for the cost of going up and fixing those lights every year. It's time that we move that stadium into another level of lighting with LEDs, which would not only be more cost effective in the area of maintenance, since you don't have to go up 30 to 40 feet to fix those. Everything would be located at the bottom of the pole. But also the wattage and the power that those would draw would be greatly reduced when we move to LED. So the plan is to have that proposal to you within the next month, so we can start getting that work done and have it completed in the summer as well. The sidewalk at the high school, right now we have a very large student parking lot area, but coming down on what we term here the loop road. So if you've ever been to the high school, hopefully you know which one I'm talking about, the loop road there. There's no sidewalk there for students. So we have students that there is a sidewalk, but it's a little bit away. And we all know that students will, just like everybody else, you'll find the path of least resistance. And right now, in some cases, walking down the loop road is the path of least resistance. So the plan is to put a sidewalk beside the loop road, encouraging students to use that and have it, them being, they would be able to walk from the upper lot to the school in a more safe fashion than what's there currently. Just so you know, as a note, that work we would do in-house since we do all of our own concrete work. So we would do that at a greatly reduced cost. And I'm getting that pricing together. And once that's found, I will, of course, let you know what that cost is, and we can move forward with that project. Again, getting that done this summer. The last one is we need to address the stadium track, Packatan Stadium track. I will have some companies come out and look at it, but there are places where the rubber is starting to come up. It's starting to deteriorate to the point where we need to investigate a total replacement of the track. And again, as I get those quotes, as I get the information, I'll present that to the board. And the hope is to have that also done this summer. It needs to be done as soon as possible. So that's the comprehensive list of the projects that we're looking at for the district. And of course, in addition to the smaller projects that we do each and every week, each and every month. So, are there any questions?
Questions for Steve? I know it goes without saying, but our Board Facilities Development Committee will be part of that evaluation process and part of the recommendations. And then have you started getting a feel for the side effect of the pandemic? This kind of work, it's nice to say we're going to do it all in the summer. Do you have any predictions on whether we're going to be able to actually accomplish all of it?
If I'm doing my job correctly, which I will, I'll be getting this to you in time to get all this done this summer. The effect of the pandemic has been threefold in my realm when it comes to this. Number one, I have to be prepared to ask for things a lot sooner. A lighting project that we may have been able to ask for in February to be done in May, we'd have to talk about it in November now. just because we don't know what the supply is going to be. So we need to get on everybody's list sooner, so that way the project can be guaranteed. The other effect is there is going to be an increase in cost. If I had come to you 5 years ago with some of these things, yes, we would be paying less, but that is the price of what's going on right now. And dovetailing off that, the other effect is I have companies that are not able to honor quotes as long because they don't know what the raw materials are going to be from month to month in some cases. So the quotes become where it was maybe 120 days before, which would give me time to have a little bit of leverage against different companies doing different work. It's more of 30 days. So just as an FYI, we do have the availability and actually the federal funds as far as ESSER are concerned are encouraging consortium pricing. And that's what I'm going to be pursuing is more of a consortium pricing process, which means that all these companies have vetted with government agencies to get pricing in place. And I can speak to you more on that as you need. But that's one of the biggest things is going out and getting bids as traditionally done before is almost impossible when you're dealing with a 30-day window. By the time you have 3 companies trying to engineer a project and get you the information back and sync it up with a board meeting and everything like that, the timelines are blown in your back to square one. So just FYI, that's what I have seen in this realm.
Which is why we're having the discussion, because we're going to have to do that kind of planning. And it almost seems counterintuitive that we have to ask, we have to quote, we have to ask sooner, but the vendors aren't able to guarantee the price. And, you know, if I was in their shoes, I would understand the challenge also. So we have to commit sooner for something that's going to take longer and hope that the pricing stays the way it is. So, but we'll meet the challenge. Thank you, Steve. Any other questions for Steve? No.
All right, moving on. There is an exhibit there, Exhibit H, for transportation for non-public students. Be resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that school bus transportation for the listed students be declared impractical. The time and distance required to provide transportation, the cost of providing transportation in terms of equipment, maintenance, personnel, and administration, and the additional service unavoidably disrupts current transportation schedules. Be it further resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the Board of Education, in lieu of providing transportation, pays parents of students attending these schools. This reimbursement will be based on the amount allotted by the state. There is a change to that exhibit that I do need to make from the right now from the floor. In Exhibit H, it lists St. Ambrose and the students who attend St. Ambrose. This year, we decided that we were providing transportation to St. Ambrose, so they no longer qualify for payment in lieu of. So that school and all of those students should be removed from that list before you do the consent. Item 3, the lease agreement between Strongsville City School District Board of Education and Furry Tail Shack. The board hereby leases to the Furry Tail Shack, and the Furry Tail Shack leases from the board a 25 by 42 foot section of Strongsville Middle School property located at 13200 Pearl Road, Strongsville, Ohio. The lease is for the term and rental amount set forth in the exhibit and is subject to the provisions contained in the lease. The lease only includes the 25 by 42 foot grass area, or otherwise termed the premises, directly behind the business and as approved by the board, and that's Exhibit I.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second?
Motion by Mrs. Hausum, second by Mr. Kropinski. Any discussion? Just want to compliment Cameron and Steve. I know time was of the essence for our furry tails, and so I'm glad we were able to respond quickly, and I think it'll work out just fine. Any other questions? George, take the roll.
Mrs. Hausum,
Yes.
Mr. Kapinski,
Yes.
Mr. Miko,
Yes?
Mrs. Bissell,
Yes.
and Mrs. Salee.
Yes.
The last item in this area is gifts that were given to the district. We have Jackie Hildebrand donated 3 games for the visually impaired students to the Strongsville Early Learning Preschool. And the Bissell family donated 2 chessboard games to 4th grade at Sarrar Elementary School. And then we do have special thanks to those families that donated to both the Book Fairy program at Whitney Elementary School and the Woohoo Cart program at Whitney Elementary School.
What was the name of the CART program?
Woohoo.
The Woohoo Cart
Say it with
program.
emphasis.
And that concludes this section of my report.
Any questions for Steve? Do the chess sets have 10 pawns each?
Oh, geez.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Next up, we have Aaron Green, Director of Curriculum, with the curriculum report for this month. Aaron?
Thank you. Good evening. Tonight I have 5 items for your consideration. Item 1 is a service agreement with McKeon Education Group. It is passed through Title I funds, and be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the Board of Education enters into an agreement with McKeon Education Group Incorporated in the amount of $5,901.26 for one part-time Title I instructor to service pupils attending Incarnate Word Academy under Title I federal funding. That is shown in Exhibit J. Item 2 is in relation to our Solo Academy, and be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that Strongsville City School District pays for students to participate in Edmentum Solutions secondary online curriculum at an approximate cost of $250 per student per month for the 21-22 school year. For items 3 and 4, they are revisions for trips from previous board meetings. Due to the pandemic, we had since canceled and now rescheduled these trips. So item 3 is a revision to the dates for the Strongsville High School German students to take a trip to Germany. It is a revision to the agenda from May 21st of 2020 and now reads Strongsville High School German students, a trip to Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. The trip dates were changed from June 17th through 28th of 21 to June 16th through 27th of 2022. Item 4, again, is another revision to the dates. This one is for the Strongsville High School French students and their trip to France. It is a revision to the agenda from February 20th of 2020, and it now reads Strongsville High School French students, trip to France. The dates changed from June 22nd to July 1st of 2021 to now June 21st through 30th of 2022. And the last item for your consideration is a student-teacher placement. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the following student teacher shall be placed, and this student will be placed with one of our high school science teachers from November 19th through February 18th. And this is a student at Western Governors University.
And Aaron, I think we did confirm the Spanish trip, we approved or changed the dates earlier, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Thanks.
Is this our first Western Governors University
I believe it
student?
is. And because
Sounds
I
great.
thought you would ask, I looked up where it was.
Where is it?
It's a nonprofit private online university out of Mill Creek, Utah.
So unless I'm mistaken,
Oh.
they have a relationship with the state of Ohio to allow low-cost online school,
Correct.
unless that's a different Western Governors University. But that's what I believe that's their claim to fame.
I believe you are correct. Thanks.
Thank you, Aaron. Next, Director of Student Services, Andy Trujillo, with his report for the month. Andy?
Good evening, members of the board. I have 2 items for your consideration. The first one being STEPS Educational Group. Be resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the Strongsville Board of Education enters into an agreement with STEPS Educational Group for placement of a student with disabilities for the 21-22 school year in the amount of $53,538, prorated for a November 8th start per the Exhibit K. The second is a settlement resolution in Exhibit L.
Settlement resolution, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second?
Motion by Mrs. Hausum, second by Mr. Kropinski. We have all received the resolution, have reviewed it. Unless there are any other questions, we are ready to vote on it. Take the roll.
Mrs. Hausum,
Yes.
Mr. Kropinski,
Yes.
Mr. Miko,
Yes,
Mrs. Bissell,
Yes.
Mrs. Sui.
Yes.
and the motion carries.
Thank you, Randy. Next, we have our Assistant Superintendent, Jenny Pelko, with the Human Resource Report. Jenny?
Thank you, Cameron. Under Human Resources this evening, I have the following items for your consideration. Under E1, resignations for non-certificated staff. Under E2, appointments for non-certificated staff and appointments for certificated substitutes. Appointment for certificated district substitute. Appointments for non-certificated substitutes. Appointments for home instruction tutors. Continuing under E2, appointment for certificated supplemental contract. Under E3, changes in hours for non-certificated staff. Under E4, continuing contract for non-certificated staff. Under E5, additional time for certificated staff over the summer of 2021. Under E6, stipends for our auditorium stage crew. Under E7, medical leave for administrative staff and medical leaves for certificated staff, as well as medical leaves for non-certificated staff. Under E8, unpaid leaves for non-certificated staff. Under E9, volunteer chaperones. And finally, under E10, we do have a termination that requires a separate vote. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent to terminate any and all employment contracts of Mary Wanda effective immediately pursuant to ORC 3319.081.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Hausum, second by Mr. Kapinski. Any discussion? Hearing none, take the roll.
Mrs. Hausum,
Yes.
Mr. Kapinski,
Yes.
Mr. Miko,
Yes,
Mrs. Bissell,
Yes.
Mrs. Sully.
Yes.
and the motion carries.
We do not have any items under technologies this month, so that concludes my report.
Next on our agenda is report on Polaris Career Center. Mrs. Bissell.
Yes, we do not meet in November as a board for Polaris, but it was a busy month anyway. We would have just finished up right now at 7:30, a registration night for the next 21-22 school year. I'm like losing track of dates because of the fiscal years, George. Thank you. So we just finished, no, do we 22-23?
We're in 21, 22 now.
Yeah, next year.
Yeah.
So we just finished up registration. All 10th grade students and their parents were welcome to Polaris for a tour and to see the facility and then to register. That is the goal. If you missed that event, of course, you can still register. Please see Polaris, the website. Yesterday, Lieutenant Governor John Husted visited the Career Center for National Apprenticeship Week. And we highlighted the partnership we have with SwageLock once again, and that was also highlighted this year at Capitol Conference last week. But John Husted was quoted as saying, "Wow, this is a beautiful school." So if you haven't seen it, it's impressive. You should check it out. And then on the heels of the Lieutenant Governor's visit, there are some upcoming news stories. News Channel 5 did 2 in the past 24 hours. So if you Google Polaris and News Channel 5, you will find those news stories. There's a 3-minute video that's actually really good about the welding program and the needs in the community right now for students and practitioners who can weld. So currently our programs are full, but I'm sure that we can look for the following year. And then Cleveland.com will also be issuing an article in the next couple of days, so you can check that out. And while we're talking about media, just a point of note, if you're not following Polaris on Twitter, I'd recommend it. They post videos, highlight student achievement pretty regularly, so it's interesting to keep an eye on what they're doing there. And then one more thing I wanted to make note of. Last time I highlighted a Polaris student ambassador, and since that meeting, we've had 3 additional students selected as student ambassadors from Strongsville. So congratulations and a thank you go to Seth Van Hove. He is learning the construction trades, and he noted that his favorite teacher is Mr. Buster, who he says has a different way of teaching than any other teacher in the classroom that I find much easier to pick up. So I pointed out Mr. Buster too because he's also a community member here in Strongsville. So it kind of comes full circle. We've got our students learning from our community members. That's a really nice thing that we've got going. And then we've got Caroline Zambo. She's in the Culinary Arts and Management, and she currently works at the Strongsville Buca de Beppo, and she hopes to one day open her own restaurant. And then finally, Landon McCahan. He's in the Computer Networking Academy. and he currently works at Ace Hardware and is aspiring to find a good job in the IT field. So we've got a lot of Strongsville students doing great work over at Polaris, and if your student's interested, now is the time. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Michelle. Report on legislation. Sherry?
I just wanted to talk about House Bill 126, which George covered. Thank you, George, and just hopefully it'll land in our favor.
Yeah, hopefully our voices are heard, and
Yeah.
as you said, it goes in our favor. So continue to advocate as much as we can.
And I'll just echo the comments. I was able to watch on the ohiochannel.org. If anyone is interested, you can go watch our very own treasurer give his testimony to the Senate Ways and Means Committee. And I wanted to compliment George on the fine job he did representing our interests. And House Bill 126 can get very detailed in the weeds, but I do think it's important for the public to contact Senator Dolan and let him know that if it's passed as it's currently amended, it would have a detrimental effect for Strongsville taxpayers, which is why it's important that we advocate not just for the school district, but the taxpayers behind it. Next is our board liaison reports. Let's start with City Council.
Yes, Strongsville City Council has met twice this month. Their Silver Sneaker Program has been up and running since October 26th, and on the first day, approximately 80 residents signed up, so I would say it's been very successful so far. The rec center is still in dire need of lifeguards in their aquatic center. If you know any certified lifeguards looking to obtain employment, have them stop by the rec. And finally, the Winter Wonderland Lighting Celebration is this Sunday at 5:30 p.m. Mayor Persiak will kick off the activities by lighting the Commons, Clock Tower, giant Christmas tree, and gazebo. Santa will be arriving on a fire truck, and there will be holiday fireworks displayed. If you can't be there, the event will be streaming on Facebook Live. And that concludes my report.
Strongsville Education Foundation. I'll arm wrestle Laura for it. We do want to once again thank the Strongsville Education Foundation. We did have a meeting this morning, which I was unable to attend. However, I did want to let the community know that there is a raffle going on currently. So if you go to the SEF Foundation website, you can purchase tickets. They're $25 each, or 5 tickets for $100. It is a football-themed raffle. There's a TV, a bunch of tailgating gear, and I know I'm going to buy a ticket, and I hope everyone else buys a ticket also. And I'm certain Mr. Faust will put the link in his weekly update. So that completes Strongsville Education Foundation. Sherry, PTA Council?
Okay, the next meeting for PTA Council will be December 2nd at 10 a.m. And it's followed by the luncheon, holiday luncheon at Meadowwood Clubhouse. And members can RSVP to Jessica Koza at jessicalkoza@gmail.com. Rockin' at Strongsville Middle School holiday dances are December 10th for 7th and 8th graders, and December 17th for 5th and 6th graders. And they had to cancel the November 19th dance because of COVID. Founders Day award ceremony is slated for February 3rd at 6 p.m. at the middle school. More information to come on that. And then the grant committee gave out a total of $5,000 to 14 different requests. And notifications should be coming out in the next couple days. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Sherry. John, do you have a student achievement update?
I have no update this evening.
You were going to piggyback on the National Honor Society inductions.
You took that away from me, so I'll pass.
Great report, John. Board committee reports. Finance Committee?
Oh, wait, there was no report.
Yeah,
And our next meeting is to be announced.
right.
The same report for Policy Committee meeting. And Facilities Committee, do we have any updates?
Yes, we did have a meeting last week and spent the majority of our time discussing 2 potential companies to perform an enrollment study. And after much discussion, they narrowed it down to 1 company and will be coming to our next board meeting to make a recommendation for us. That concludes the report.
Excellent. And Business Advisory Council.
Our next meeting is December 10th here at 7:30 a.m.
Next on our agenda is consent calendar. Action by the Board of Education and adoption of the consent calendar at this point of the agenda means all items appearing in the agenda with asterisks are adopted in a single motion unless requested otherwise. Do I have any otherwise? Hearing none, we did have a change from the floor for section B2. Our transportation reimbursements, we are removing St. Ambrose. Anything else? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second?
Motion by Mrs. Hausum, second by Mr. Kropinski. Any discussion? Take the roll.
Mrs. Hausum,
Yes.
Mr. Kropinski,
Yes.
Mr. Miko,
Yes?
Mrs. Bissell,
Yes.
Ms. Sully.
Yes.
And the motion carries. Superintendent's timely information. Cameron?
Thank you, Mr. Miko. We do have a couple reminders. We're getting into the winter concert season. So I think I talked about it last time, but tomorrow evening, it's a ticketed event, but a violinist who is a part of TSO will be performing tomorrow night. 2 shows, 6 p.m. and 8:30. If you don't care about seeing Mark Wood, Maria Anagnostou will be there playing as a part of the group, so that's worth a ticket in itself. So 2 shows tomorrow. Tickets are still available at brownpapertickets.com, so it should be a wonderful show. And then, as you can see, we start our holiday concert season with our high school choir on December 1st, orchestra on December 2nd, and band on December 15th. All of those will be at the Strongsville High School Auditorium. So if you have kids in there or just want to hear some wonderful, talented musicians play and sing and get your holiday season started off on the right note, you like that pun there, Mr. Miko? Thank you. Then that was so bad I can't even laugh. But great concerts upcoming. Some dates to remember. We know we have our Thanksgiving break coming up next week, Wednesday through Friday. After we return from Thanksgiving break, it's time for my next parent update, as we shared this time. In that parent update, it will start the window for those families that want to enroll in our virtual academy for the 2nd semester. So that window will start on November 29th. It will close on December 10th, and that is a semester commitment. So that is for families that are currently in the Solo Academy. If they'd like to continue, they need to re-enroll for the 2nd semester. If we have families in the Solo Academy that would like to return to in-person learning, there's nothing that they need to do. They just don't fill out the survey, and we will have them re-enrolled. Or for families that are in-person learning that would like to go to virtual, that opportunity will be there. As a reminder, this is a semester commitment. So once you are in for the full semester. And if you don't enroll by the deadline, you are not placed in due to all the legislative mandates we have to meet with virtual academies in the state this year. As we move through December, although we'll have one more meeting in December, last day for students is December 16th. December 17th is a professional development day for our staff, and winter break will run from the 20th to the 31st. So those are some timely information updates for this meeting.
Thank you. Board of Education other. Do we have any Board of Education others? So I know the weather looks frightful outside, so hopefully Dr. Rybo will do the right thing. And whatever decision he makes, I'm sure it'll be wrong for half of the people paying attention. But it's time to get your parkas and your hats and your trench coats out and be ready for winter. Any others? Meeting notification. Our next meeting is December 9th, 2021 at 7 p.m. in the meeting room. We do have reason for executive session under the topics of
To consider the employment of a public employee, to review negotiations with public employees, and to consider matters required to be kept confidential by federal or state law.
is evaluating bad puns a legitimate reason for
Could be.
executive
Could be.
session?
No, it is not.
Thank you for keeping us on the straight and narrow. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Hausum, second by Mr. Kropinski. Do I have any discussion? Please take the roll.
Mrs. Hausum,
Yes.
Mr. Kapinski,
Yes.
Mr. Miko,
Yes?
Mrs. Bissell,
Yes.
Mrs. Sully.
Yes.
The motion carries. We will enter into executive session at 8 p.m. This is our last meeting before Thanksgiving, so I wish all of our families a very happy Thanksgiving. As always, we have many things to be thankful for, and I hope you're thankful for those things that you need to be thankful for. Thank you for your attention.